Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's virtual meetup. On today's agenda, we'll discuss the new special event solutions. I'm joined by my colleagues Jeremiah and Scott. And Scott will kick us off with an introduction, and then Jeremiah will jump into the work we've done with special events. Then we'll wrap up with a quick summary of the coronavirus site safety solution and how you're able to apply those capabilities in addition to the events you're supporting. All right, so I'll go ahead and kick it over to Scott.
So all of us have a different kind of frame of reference when we talk about special events. Some people call them community events. Um, Suffice it to say that in every city or town we live in, right, there are big and small events that happen throughout the course of the year. They could be farmers markets that happen on the weekend, or maybe food festivals or marathons that are occurring. In some communities, there are large events because they have facilities like speedways and and arenas to hold large sporting events or music festivals. But there are every day in every community across America different events that are bringing people together for either sporting activities, music activities, or other kinds of special interests. And as we started looking at some of the challenges that we were hearing from governments that manage these events and permit the ability to conduct those events, we saw several key challenges emerge. The first is the fact that many of them were managing this information in antiquated systems that were generally separate from their other permitting applications they had in their community. That because of the very nature of these events, right, there's a whole mobile or distributed workforce that's manning the event, ensuring the safety, public health if necessary, and even sanitation requirements for the events. And that distributed workforce has limited technical skills. The other thing that was interesting is just the sheer number of events and quantity of events that are occurring in communities seem to be going up. Right? There are more and more of these happening, big and small, in the communities, and they really have become an economic development engine for many communities across the country. And with that, there are economic pressures to make sure that all of the costs that the governments incur to conduct these events in their community are covered. And obviously, recently, health and safety is at the foremost for any community who's beginning to think about restarting events in their community. If we drill down a little bit further and talk a little bit about the operational challenges that we heard before and during events, what we saw was that many times the permits are PDFs that happen to exist on a website, maybe a fillable form. The result of that application was a permit form that then got routed throughout an organization, maybe via email or inter-office mail. So there was a very manual and labor-intensive process that made it difficult to track the status of events as they were occurring in a whole portfolio of events that may be happening in your community. The hard copy plans that may have been submitted with the permit application and maybe developed to plan out how public safety resources are allocated were hard copy and difficult to distribute at scale. And ultimately that led to operational challenges day of event with information that may have been distributed to on-site dispatchers, and ultimately the real-time information that the people working the event needed was hard to visualize. What we saw in some cases is that, in larger events where they were tracking public safety events on scene or incidents that may have been occurring, those were tracked on whiteboards and on punch lists in the command center. And ultimately the kind of distributed or lack of centralized information made it very challenging to do after action reports. And what we saw is many of those after action reports were PowerPoint presentations with snapshots or copies of hard copy maps that were inserted in for the purposes of briefing interested stakeholders. And that was really, those challenges existed before even some of the new challenges that we're dealing with COVID-19. What we have seen is that many communities are starting to think about how they resume events. Sometimes those may be major sporting events like the NFL or Major League Baseball activities and events in the community. Other times they may be small food festivals. But ultimately, every community is thinking about how they can begin to start to reinvigorate the community and get people out and about again. And with that, though, they have to take new precautions. And so they're looking at things like how they plan for social distancing ahead of time. How do they keep people from queuing up in lines and gathering in large concentrations? How do they track that during the event and understand where crowds may be gathering? How do they place health resources that they need to mitigate health risks, like PPEs and hand sanitizers at strategic locations? Do they want to conduct health screenings before people enter the event? And so there's a variety of new challenges that COVID-19 and the pandemic is presenting. As the event unfolds, what we're hearing is that, obviously they want to begin to monitor high touch areas or where people are, being checked into the facility and regularly clean those and maybe restock the PPEs and other health resources that are being used, and ultimately communicate those health safety protocols they're taking to ensure that the people attending the event feel safe with stakeholders, both internally and externally. So this summer we shipped two special event solutions, and they're really designed for kind of two key buyers or key implementations. The first is the special event permitting and operations solutions. And this is a comprehensive event permitting and safety solution for governments that want to manage the entire life cycle of an event. So everything from the permit application all the way through safety operations on the day of the event or during the event itself. And what it really does is promote collaboration across all the departments. And you'll see that today in Jeremiah's demonstration. The second solution is special events safety operations, or special event operations, I'm sorry. And what that is a subset of the larger permitting and operations solution that's designed for public safety agencies that just want to manage events and the safety operations that are associated with that. So if you're a public safety agency and you're not part of a larger permitting workflow, or you do not have the ability to influence that, maybe in your organization, you can deploy the special event operations solution and use that to manage real-time information, to develop the health and safety plans for that event and ultimately manage real-time information the day of the event. So both of these solutions are designed to work together as a comprehensive system. And what you'll see today when Jeremiah does the demonstration is that there's a collection of information products that help the event organizer apply for a permit, understand the status of their permit in the review process. We then have some information products that are designed for the event coordinator or the safety planner. And what that does is help you prepare the site plans or the site maps that are critical to the event itself, and ultimately use that site map information to develop operations plans on top of it. There'll be several information products that you can use to share event information with internal stakeholders, so you can facilitate the review process, understand the status of the events, and then ultimately use that information to guide day of or as the event unfolds operations and conduct after actions once the event finishes. You'll also notice that Jeremiah will show you today a couple different ways you can share information with the public and really use ArcGIS Hub and some focused information products to promote event information and really, as I said, to market these events as community gatherings and economic development opportunities. So with that, what I'd like to do is just turn it over to Jeremiah and let him start by showing you the solutions today. So I'll stop sharing, Jared, and you can take it from here.
Great. Let me get set up here. Okay, should be sharing my screen. Holler if you can't. Yeah, so thanks, Scott. We're really excited about this solution and to see that several folks are adopting it already, getting ready for as they open up their community or making plans to do so. One of the things I'd like to reiterate is that with special events, there's so many people from a local government that are involved with the process in several departments. It's really a big impact on the entire community and the organization. There's several information products within this solution, and each one is intended for a different persona. So I'll use some slides to just kind of set context as I transition between these different information products. But let's get started at the very beginning, where permits get created. So what happens is an event organizer, this is the person that's going to be hosting and setting up the 5K or the marathon or the concert in the park. They will communicate with the city or county to apply for a permit. So they're going to be the one that's really creating this special event and kicking off the event. The next in this process is the internal workflow is going to be the special event coordinator. Who holds that position inside your organization. And this is really a central figure that's going to be involved throughout the whole process. Their job is the coordinator of taking the event from the initial stages of when it's submitted to approval to kind of making sure it's successful. But early on here, they're going to be really managing and reviewing the event permit. So let's look at these kind of two personas and how things get started here. So I'm going to jump over here and I'm going to first show a public-facing page. I'm going to come back to this page a little bit later on, but it's a way that you could really promote your community and events that are happening within it. But one of the things you could do is you could start to reach out to organizers and allow organizers to apply for a permit. When they click this button, what they will be presented with is a public-facing form where they can fill out information that's relevant to that event permit. So we're going to be looking at Naperville, Illinois. RibFest is a real event that is held there. It was canceled, unfortunately, like many events this year due to COVID. But the other information around it that we'll show you, we've just kind of mocked up. But what we're looking at is the permit that could be filled out. So the organizer of RibFest could fill out this information. This is all pretty typical information that's collected from a city or county. What's the estimated attendance? When does it start? When do you start setting up? When do you take things down? Key contact information. Now, a lot of this information, we've looked at hundreds of cities and the way they collect this information, and we feel like we have a really good base here for what is collected in these permits. One of the questions that's come up quite a bit since we've released this just under 2 months ago is, can you make changes? And you can definitely do that, and we have that in our documentation. So each community might be a little bit different, and you can make updates to this form. But it's pretty key information about what is required on making sure that the city knows everything that's going to go into be setting up the event. There's a lot of dependent questions here as well. This whole process, as we mentioned, we've looked at several cities. It's usually going to be a fillable PDF form, and that obviously just presents some paper challenges automatically when you're having some people fill out a PDF. So we go through. I won't show you all the pages of the permit, but the organizer will fill out the remaining information, click submit, and that's going to go into an internal workflow. So now I'm going to really switch roles, and I'm going to play the role of the special event coordinator. So someone within your organization that's in charge of managing these events. The special event permit manager, this is going to be a central application that we're going to see pretty much throughout the whole life cycle of these events. So we'll be coming back to it. Each row that I see here represents one of the events that was submitted through that form. So I can see, I can hunt for a RibFest, or I might want to filter out and say, I just want to see new events that have been submitted. So there I can see that I have my RibFest events. And really what happens now as I select these events, as a special event coordinator, this is really kind of my key to guide it through the process. It's my job to guide it through submitted, it's under review, approved, and what needs to happen next. I could review the full application, which is what we were just looking at a moment ago. But my first step here is to really come in and say, based upon that information, maybe we need to deny it for more information, or I can move it to under review. And once I move it to under review, it doesn't show up here in this list anymore because of this filter. So I'll remove the filter, and I'll just highlight it again, and we can see that it says it's under review. But more importantly, we can see that my progress bar changes. I can see where it is in the process, and I get a bunch more buttons that really present themselves in this whole process for what I need to do next and how I start to really take on that role of the coordinator and do my coordination efforts within the organization. So that's really the first step is, allowing your organizers to fill out a permit that then goes to you and for you to really kick off the process. Scott had a nice diagram that kind of explained all these processes. I'm just taking them one step at a time. The next step is preparing a site plan. And in all likelihood, I'll probably be playing the same person, the special event coordinator. Actually, before I talk more about this, we mentioned that there's two solutions. The special event operations has a very similar workflow, but there's a much more simpler form to fill out to enter enter a special event. And we don't have as many options for managing the permits or doing some of the review process. But the same concept for if I'm only interested in the public safety side of things and managing events is still very similar to what I'm showing now. But the next step, after I know that I have an event that we want to hold, is to create a site plan. And again, this could be the special event coordinator. If public safety is really running with things, it might be the special events coordinator within public safety, maybe someone within law enforcement or fire. But their job is to create a site map. And a site map is, you think of what are the temporary features that are going to be set up for the event. Where's my barricades, my temporary sponsor booths or restrooms that might get hauled in. Another thing that may want to do is copy event maps from a previous year. These site maps are pretty simple to create, I'll show you, but there can be some work that goes into just drawing where everything goes. If you have a marathon that happens every year, and for the most part it's set up very much the same, you can just copy it so you're ready to use it again and make slight modifications. That way you're not having to draw everything from scratch. So let's take a look at creating a site map. Once I'm in the under review process, this edit site map presents itself. If I click this button, a new application pops up here, and it looks like this. This map already has some information filled in on it, so we already have some icons on the display for RibFest. But a typical workflow might be, I'm going to go into a specific area where I'm going to add some additional features to draw the site map. We present a palette of items you might want to add on the display. So, for instance, I might want to change into imagery just to kind of see where we're working with, and we have some fields that, maybe there's going to be a concert and other booths that are going to be set up here that I can start to add on my display. From here, I can start to add in these features. So if I can just click on the map, a common feature might be let me go ahead and refresh this real quick here. It's going to add in a sponsor booth for just a food vendor in the park. So if I zoom in here, I'll add this point on the map here. And one of the things that you'll see is every time I add in a new location, I'll go ahead and call this Naperville Brews. Maybe we're going to have a beer vendor that's going to be set up here. It's going to also give it an event identifier based upon RibFest, because in the previous application, when we launched it, we know that this application is very specific and it's showing me all of the associated sitemap features for RibFest. So that's a food concession tent. Again, if I have event signs, fire extinguishers, restrooms, route markers for a marathon, these are all kind of my temporary features that I would set up. I can also draw lines for where there's a route, or I might be adding in other features for parking restrictions, and then some localized areas. Again, you can add and remove to that template as well if you have specialized features, but that's for the most part, again, what we've seen for most people want for a site map. You can just kind of take a look at what all the features are on this map here to see that we have some areas that are restricted, or maybe we want to specify where there's going to be sponsor booths set up via an area. So that's my site map, and it's really just setting up where those temporary features are on the display of my map. Okay, so after I create the site map, that's when I can really start to work with the other people in my organization about to give them a base to say, okay, here's the sitemap, what it's looking like. We have the permit information, and then who's going to want to review and interact with that information. So another key capability is just informing stakeholders, and there's really 3 different types of stakeholders. The first is going to be internal reviewers. So what we've seen and heard from a lot of cities is when a permit comes in, there's one key person from each department that's going to have a review for it. So Public Works is going to be interested in roads. Your health department is going to make sure that maybe there's going to be food inspections and inspections of the food concessions. Public safety obviously is going to want to see the impact for how they might be supporting the event. And then other departments such as your fiscal responsibility, making sure that taxes are being taken care of and everything like that. So internal reviewers could really be people from all the different departments inside your organization. The second is executives. So someone from your mayor's office, or maybe the key department heads from your major departments want to see really at a glance all the permits, where they are in their status, and just some key indicators about how it might impact the community and how the city might support it. And then lastly is the general public. So how does the general public find these events, and not just find an event, but really navigate around and find the information for any one given event that they might want to go to? So let's take a look at these stakeholders and how they might interact with this event management system. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to first play again the role of the special event coordinator. So as I'm interacting here with the interface, I've already said that RibFest is under review. In the dialog here, there's also some drop downs. I can notify that the sitemap is complete. I've already set that to be complete. But my first stakeholders are going to be the other people that need to review the permit from my organization before I really move it to this next stage of approved. And that's where this notify reviewers button comes in. Now, what this does is it launches an email, and through some pretty simple configuration, you can set in the to message. In all likelihood, each permit is going to be reviewed by the same number of people. So if you have 9 people that are reviewing each event, this is a way that you can notify that, okay, this event is ready for them to review. And they'll get a URL that's specific to that event. So if I close this, what I would do is I would send this to other people and inside my organization. And the URL that I was showing looks something like this. So their job is to look at the events. They can see the sitemap that's being presented. They can click View Permit Application. That's going to open up the permit in read-only mode, so they can go through and they can see all the information about the tent setup and the alcohol permit, if applicable. But their job is to come in and provide comments. So we can see that there's one comment from the health department already that is basically said that it needs to make sure that there's food vendors allowing for safety protocols. If my role is in another department, what I'll do is I'll click this button. I'll say that I'm in a specific department. I'll say I'm in Public Works. I've looked at the sitemap a little bit more, and I can say we need more roadblocks around the cemetery. And I can say approve contingent upon the roadblocks. And my feedback can say is, well, we can go ahead and improve based upon that information. Again, I might want to give it some more feedback. So I'll click submit, and really each one of your departments should be providing information. Now, this is a pretty beneficial workflow, because this process that we see right now is usually handled through in some cases, inter-office mail. They'll print off all the permit information, they'll print off a sitemap, and it will literally go from one person to another person. And as you know, that can probably take quite a while. There can be some bottlenecks there. Or it can just lead to a lot of emails. Now, you send out one email knowing that the letting them know that it's ready to review. But rather than getting a whole bunch of chain emails where you're kind of managing all the comments are stored in one central place. And that is ready for the coordinator back in the special event permit manager. So their job is that they can refresh this page, or they don't have to refresh the whole website. They can just say, refresh the data. If I click on RibFest again, then what I can do is I'll be able to come in and see that there's this comments tab, and the comments tab will present all that information here. So at this point, as a coordinator, I might have more work to do. I might have to get back to the person that submitted the permits and ask for more information. But when we're all ready and aligned and good, then I can say that this permit is approved. So we're ready to have RibFest, and we're pretty much ready for the organizer to start setting up, and their expectations are sent to them. Now, when I do that, I can notify the organizer, and what they'll get back is their original permits, and they'll also get a read-only view of the map, which I'll show in just a moment too. So the organizer, the person who originally set it up, applied for the permit, can see what's expected for them for the setup. So if you've gone back and forth and say that we need more restrooms, they can clearly see where all the setup required for them is on that site map. Okay, so that's the review process, and how you can really kind of collaborate with all the different departments inside your organization. The other stakeholder that I'm going to talk about is really executives. This might be someone in your mayor's office. It might be department heads within public safety and law and fire. And what this is a pretty simple dashboard that looks at all that permit information. One of the things we've heard back from cities is we get a lot of events and we can't keep up with the review process, or we don't know where they are within the life cycle. The permit manager can show that, but an executive from the mayor's office can see how are we doing, to see how many events have been submitted but we haven't really taken them to the next level, or how many events are approved that are coming up. You can also see events over time. What's going to be a busy month for us? Typically for a lot of communities, it might be the summer months where you're holding a lot of events, but it can kind of help you with your foreplanning as to what's coming up within your community. Other key indicators that we've heard from, especially from public safety, what are those flags that really need to pay some caution to? Where are the events where there's alcohol going to be provided? Where's there fireworks? Where's there going to be amplified sound? It kind of helps you with forethinking for planning about what you can support, but also just what you need to be ready for, and what other where the typical complaints might come in. So that's sharing internally. The last stakeholder that I'm going to move back to is the general public. So we have all this information. We have a process to take our permits and move them through the life cycle. We can present that information on the page that I started with. So this is an ArcGIS hub site that comes with the solution, where, as Scott mentioned earlier, it's really a way to promote the community, but also much like an economic development page for your community, to show off what's going on in your community. Now, we do have some COVID information. We know that COVID is going to be with us for a while, and if you are going to be holding events, what needs to be happening to make sure those events are safe, and just to really kind of relay that information onto the public. We tie into the events and the calendar that is already provided to see how many events are being held and what's attendance. And then there is a calendar. So if I click this Learn More, what this will do is the general public can open up a calendar to basically see all the events within their community. Now, the other dashboards that you saw, there's a lot more events on the display. What this does is it uses a view of a layer to only show those events that are approved. So you're not showing any other sensitive information to the public or events that might happen. These are ones that are planned and approved, gone through the internal review process. And I can click on any one, see more information about it. I can visit the website. So if the Naperville Women's Half Marathon has a website, I can go to it. But I can also view the map. And this is public facing. So this is going to look like the site map that we created a little bit ago. But it's different. There's no edit button. So everything here is public facing. So this is just another event inside Naperville. We thought we'd show you one that has a marathon track, for instance, on it. So the public can start to see the information and all the assets that went into setting up on that display. This is also searchable. So if I had those food vendors, if I wanted to search for Naperville brews, I could see those food vendors on this display as well. So this is some tools that you can really promote those events to your citizens, but they can also start to see, well, if I'm going to attend this event, then where does everything happen? And you've probably have attended events and looked at maps, and oftentimes these maps are static. They're made as PDFs and there's no interactivity to them. So the public being able to have a map that shows them interaction and navigation is really beneficial for them as well. Okay, so that's working with our stakeholders, and we can see, just to kind of come back to what I was saying earlier. There's a lot of hands that are involved. We haven't even got into the day of the events yet, but there's several people that get involved into just making sure the event is ready.
Hey,
And we're
Jeremiah,
still, yeah.
let's pause for a minute maybe and just take a few questions. See if anyone has any. I had one for you. You worked with several communities early after we released this solution. What are some of the common kind of configurations you see in the permitting workflows? Like, what are people asking, as they begin to localize the implementation in their organization?
So what are the questions around the permitting workflows? So, I think number one, I showed the permit survey. People have different questions. So just updating that survey has probably been the most popular question. We just had a few of those this week from people that deployed it. And it's cool to see people getting in there and they've shared a little bit of what they're doing with me for just other types of questions that they have. Things like, are you going to have a climbing wall? And do you have insurance for things like that? Things that we don't have the permit now, but each city is a little bit unique.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing when it comes to permitting is, there's a true permitting systems, many of our partners. So people have been asking, how do I interface, taking that information that we have in the survey and put it inside of a permit. So there's a couple ways you can do that. There's ETL tools where you can basically take this information and then put it inside that permit information, or basically extract the permit information already and then put it into ours. We've also been talking to, like CityWorks, for instance, is a great partner of ours. They've already been talking about doing a more tightly coupled integration with this solution as a whole. So that's something to think about too. If you have an existing permitting solution, we can talk with you and the vendors about what that could look like.
That's good. Yep.
Cool. Anything else?
I think those are all the questions. I didn't see any other questions on the permitting. I guess one more I would have for you. I would guess many organizations charge a fee for the permits themselves. Have you talked to any communities about their plans for like incorporating payment with the permit application?
Oh, correct. Yeah, that's a good one. That has come up for sure. Yeah, so there's fees that will happen when it comes to permits. Some organizations don't collect any fees. They just, they feel that the permit's going to bring in economic, value by just holding the event. There's others that will hold a flat fee. It's $50 for the permit. There's other ones that will say, based upon contingencies, it's going to be X amount of dollars for X amount of people, and then if you're going to have, alcohol, there's going to be additional fees. So how do we, if you want to have a payment for permits, how do you do that? So yeah, my answer is really two ways. One is you could use one of those existing systems, like we mentioned, CityWorks, and just utilize them. They have the payment figured out already. We have other communities have tackled it on their own. They're taking the exact same permit that we have with the solution, and they're integrating with payment vendors like PayPal and using webhooks to basically say, okay, when the permit's been processed, then let's fire off a trigger to invoke a payment to PayPal. So there's people that are doing that for sure with the solution. So there's really two answers: use an existing solution or extend ours. It just depends on where you if you want to do the work on your own.
That's great. Yep. Okay. Thanks. That's good, Jer.
Cool. Okay, just a couple more workflows, but they can be pretty big ones. So we're still not really ready to have the events. We've gone through the process of approving the events, but one of the biggest strains on your city or county could be just supporting it. That typically comes on the day of, and where public safety gets involved. So how do we create operations plans? The sitemap is temporary features that usually the organizer brings in. But what's the resources that you as the city or county are going to be responsible for, both from public safety as well as the health safety officer that might be ensuring things are running safety, especially in the time of COVID. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to come back over here, and again, we'll just keep on talking about how central of an application the permit manager is. If I come into RibVest, there's an edit operations map. Again, this will launch an email that I could send to my public safety person that's going to be in charge of planning. If you're using the operations solution that's just geared for public safety, they have a button that's very similar, but it just launches it right away, since you're probably going to be managing it all from public safety. But what it will do is it's going to open up a map that will look like this. It's going to look kind of similar to what we have already. We can see these maps get a lot, kind of busy. There's a lot that's going on for the event. But if I start scrolling in here, we can see that all of the RibVest information that was already added is on the display. So my Naperville brews that I just added in, I guess it was 17 minutes ago already, is on the display. And then I get a different palette here for what I might want to start adding in for my operations. Now, what we have up front is health safety. This is for the time of COVID. We really added it this year, but it's also can extend beyond COVID as well. But things for like a temperature screening. So maybe there's going to be an entry point about right here where this intersection is. I can say there's going to be a temperature screening here, and I can just add in some more descriptive information if I want to. Start to add these locations on the map. Again, other things that are you probably hear about in the news every day: hand sanitizer, PPE, those type of things, just to make sure that staff have what they need to be safe. We also have some lines. If you want isolation routes, if someone does get a high temperature, where they're going to go. We have things like crowd lines where I can come in and I can just basically draw on the line. So I can say, this is my, and I can save that. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me a line that is 463 feet. And all we're doing is just dividing that by 6 to basically say, if we're going to have this set up, how many people could we have in line to make sure we're adhering to socially distance rules. Similar, we have a crowd areas. So my crowd areas, maybe that beer tent that I set up already, or the sponsor booth, is going to be a larger beer tent area. So I can click on this, and I can say this is going to be my beer tent area, and I'll just call this beer tent area 4, for instance. I'll give it what I can think for how many people might go into it, and I'll click save. What it's going to do is give me a label back. This is following CDC guidelines based upon how many people could fit in there. So in 45,000 square feet, we could actually fit 398 people inside there. So you might want to click on this. I could bump it up. This is just really kind of a guideline and an estimate. If you wanted to, if you had structures in there, that number is probably going to be considerably less. So it's just kind of a guideline for you to go through, but we'll leave it at 100 for now. The crowd areas have been useful too, just to see how many people might go in an area, and we'll talk about how we can monitor that in real time. So that's been popular for COVID. Now, another tool that's been around for a while, you can see in some of our other maps we've had roadblocks, which obviously is a a key part of holding events and making sure traffic flow sets up. But there's another crowd estimate tool that I wanted to show real quick. This is based upon something that's called the Jacobs method. This is before COVID, has been around for decades, really around monitoring capacity in DC. And we can see that what this does is it gives me a estimate for how many people could be in there, low, medium, and high values. You can think of high as being, a mosh pit at a concert. You got, elbow to elbow people, whereas low is still pretty highly populated. But the reason why this is useful is, down the line, if you're going to have more crowds of people, these numbers can kind of help guide you to see, how am I going to, from a public safety resource allocation point, start lining up my resources. So based upon this area and how many people might be there, I can start to drop my pins about how who's going to be there. So maybe Scott is a point of contact for this crew that's going to be out there. I can give a phone number, unit, unit ID, and radio channel that I can all look up later on. So I can start assigning individual resources. Where's my fire and police, my EMT staff going to be supporting the event? So typically what happens is, as an event is getting ready, public safety will fill out something called a IAP, an incident action plan, and you're basically lining out who's going to staff it from a public safety side of things and where they're supposed to be. So this map can really be designed in conjunction with that IAP to set up, where my resources are going to be. Several other tools for, designing where people are going to be and when. There's also some preliminary analysis tools I can do to set up, what if scenarios if there's, a certain type of threat such as a bomb or a chemical spill. Just for time, I'm not going to go over all that today. But that's really getting ready for a map. Keep in mind, as these maps change, oftentimes your resources might be changing on the fly. You can make adjustments to that on the day of, and that's going to be useful on when you go live. So the last workflow is probably the biggest one on all this, but I want to talk about what happens on the day of the events, and even more hands get involved here. There's going to be a safety coordinator that's really kind of looking at everything that's going to be going on and coordination of the event. There's going to be, not for all events, but for many larger events, if you have a command center, there might be a dispatcher in a command post, and that dispatcher might be getting calls from radio or 911, or the event organizer might be feeding them incidents, so they get a lot of information. People out in the field are going to be presented with mobile applications to help achieve their work. And then a commander that really wants to look at everything and view and when all the event is done. So let's take a look at kind of a high level at what happens on the day of. So without going into a ton of detail, one of the things that you can do when you're ready, this application is approved. One of the things that happens with a notebook is, with the solution, is we provide a ArcGIS notebook that will create unique applications of what I'm about to show you for RibFest. So RibFest is going to get its own set of applications for that day. So there's basically a notebook that will run, and it's going to create this special event field reporter, for instance, and all the other applications I'm going to show you. And you'll do that for each time you're going to have an event that's approved. But now I'm the role of someone that's working the event. I'm law enforcement, or I'm a medic, boots on the ground. I see something, I'm going to report it. So suspicious activity, I'm going to say there's an object, backpack has been left for an hour. And I can, obviously if I'm going to be using my phone, I'm going to get a much better experience, but I'll take a picture of that backpack, click where it is. I can use my GPS if I'm using my phone, and click submit. So that gets logged automatically, and that's a way that I can just really quickly report information in the field. Now, where does that go? So this information then will go into this application, which is the Special Event Field Manager. Now I'm playing the role of the on-site dispatcher. So the on-site dispatcher is going to get that information that's reported in the field. but it's also going to get the ability to create assignments. So if I hear of a brand new assignment, I can say, well, radio just tell me that there's an incident that I need to put here. So maybe we'll say there's a fight in the parking lot, and we're going to call this a high priority. And I can also assign it. So one of the things that I'll see on this map is I can see who's working the events and where are they. So I can see if Unit 1 is, or Unit 2 is law enforcement, maybe I want to assign this to them. So I can create my assignment, and then whoever I assign it to is going to get a notification on their phone to respond and take care of that incident. These incidents all have the ability to kind of see where they are within the process, whether they've been assigned or taken care of on the display. So that's the way the dispatcher can do their work. And again, the dispatcher, you might have 911 already, but if there's a temporary dispatch set up, we've seen a lot of dispatchers are just using Post-it notes and starting to move this information around this way, and there's not an efficient way to manage all the incidents in one way. I'm going to move over now, and I'm going to play really more of the role of the incident commander that really wants to see the same information, but into more of a digestible way. So this is a dashboard. They might use it on their device. They might have it on a big board on display. And let's see here, if I can maybe just change my screen size. That I hit my taskbar. But there's some tabs down at the bottom here that's going to show me some information on this dashboard. The very first thing that we see are just all those incidents. So everything that the dispatcher has logged, we can see including the backpack that I just reported, is going to show up on the display along with the picture that I took. So I can see all those incidents that have not been closed. I can also see where my staff supporting the event are within the field as well. We can see where they were originally assigned to see how many people are on assignment. I can see some weather. I didn't see anything really in Naperville, but if I zoom out quite a ways here, I'll probably see some radar in the sky. So you can kind of see it up there in the upper left. We can see any warnings as well as radar display. I can see traffic. I'll see my own roadblocks that I've set up for the display, but I also see Living Atlas data. That's a big, Public Works is a big part of events, and they really want to make sure that traffic and people are moving clearly and have a way to get out of the events. So that's a good way to see this. Talking about crowds a little bit. If you remember a little bit earlier, I set up the beer tent, this area 4 that's on the display, and it's flashing this area that I set up. So what I can do is, the solution also has a mobile application that's called the Crowd Counter, and people supporting the events. So that area that you drew for the beer area, it's probably going to be staffed by people, letting people in. Maybe they're doing ID checks, but they also might just be counting. You may have seen this in the day of COVID of just at a Home Depot or a grocery store, keeping track of how many people can be set in. If you remember, I had 100 people set for my beer area. That's going to be the high end of this application, and it's going to be notified. So it's basically a way for people that are monitoring out in the field to see how many people can be let in. So that's really this crowds display. We added it for COVID, but we got a lot of great feedback for these large events that, especially fire, they do this already, and they can see this value longer term, and just making sure that they're up to code and they're not letting too many people into one area as their events unfolding. And then obviously the commander gets to see all this information that's being tracked. The last tab in the display is a sanitation tab. What we can do is we also have a configuration of collector that allows sanitation staff to go in and really monitor and see, are we restocking PPE? Are we disinfecting anything in a timely fashion? So it's a way to really kind of monitor that safety aspect as well. And then lastly, we have a historical call log that really kind of shows everything on the display of this, and we can see what's been taken care of, what's been unassigned, and what's the progress of the event from a public safety side of things. Okay, one last application. This is pretty much everything that happens on the day of the event, and then what happens when the event is done. So Scott mentioned oftentimes there's after actions that are set up from public safety that, if it's a multiple day event, it might be set up every night where people get debriefed. For a big event like this, it might be, a few days after the event. But it's basically to talk about how did we do, what could we do better? If there were incidents, how did we respond to them? So what we see is really the same map that we've been talking about all along, where we see all of our locations for our site map. But in addition, we have all those incidents that got set up here. So my backpack that I reported would appear here. I also see my historical tracks of where people are. One of the things that's set up when we run that notebook is we're utilizing trackers so we can keep track of the locations of people over time. So both of these things are going to display in a time slider. So as I start to move the time slider throughout the process of the event, I can see where my staff have moved. I can also see that these incidents will pop on and off the map as we take care of them or as they get created. So that's really kind of a way for me to start to see all that information in one centralized place. I can filter it out. There's only 4 tracks here, but if I have a larger staff that's supporting this event, I might want to look at their tracks or dump this information out into a report, which is a pretty common practice as well. Okay, so that's a lot. There's a lot that happens on the day of. There's a lot of hands involved. I know I went through that pretty quick, but you can kind of get a sense of there's people out in the field that are acting as sensors to see information that they report. They can be tied back. We're tracking their locations in real time. Should something happen, we can kind of see what's happening and when. The dispatcher has a better system than post-it notes or drawing on a big map to allocate resources, and you get insight to all this information that people might want to be seeing. The last thing I really want to show is really how do we get all this. Again, there's a bit more to it, but we showed you several different information products today. Here's the notebook, but I'm going to skip over that. So I'm just logged into ArcGIS Online. If you haven't seen, early, it was actually late spring, we introduced the Solutions app, which is now part of the integrated with all the other apps inside ArcGIS Online. So if I click on this, what I can do is I can see solutions that I can deploy automatically. So this is a list of solutions. I can search for them, but I can see the event permitting and operations solution I was just looking at. I can click on this and click Get Now. When I click Get Now, what it will do is it will just go ahead and fire everything up. All those information products that I showed you, as well as the web maps that have arcade into it and all the symbology, all of the layers and all the views, all get deployed. So there's going to be a folder that gets deployed, and you can see all of the things that I need are set up and inside my organization. And if you want, obviously, you can start making configurations to the out-of-the-box applications as you see fit too. But that's really a way that I can start to deploy this wealth of applications that I showed you today. And with that, that's pretty much it. I think I'll turn it back over to you, Scott. And I think you had a couple more things to discuss, and then we'll open up to Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Jared. Let me just share my screen. I'll let you stop. Hey, Jared, will you stop sharing?
Oh, sorry. Yep.
No, you're fine. Okay, let me share my screen. So I just want to wrap up with a few slides, and then we can take some final questions. So Jer showed you, just to summarize, Jer showed you two solutions, or if you think about it in terms of the permitting and safety operations, one solution that covers the entire event lifecycle, everything from the permit applications through the planning stage, prior to the event, day of event or during the event. There's a whole series of operational maps that help you manage safety resources, track health issues that may be occurring now, and ultimately even crowd counts and things like that. And then finally, after each event, you can conduct an after action briefing and use that information to plan next year's event. Because as we know, many of these events are actually reoccurring things that happen in communities every year. And it's nice to understand how we responded to that event this year so we can plan in future events. The other thing that I'll just want to drive a sharp point on is that Jared talked a little bit about the notebook. And what that notebook does is really create a unique set of operational maps for a given event. And that is quite handy because that obviously helps with your after action briefings and also helps you leverage that information in subsequent years. So you saw Jared create the event map or a site map for a given event. You can actually use that site map in subsequent years. And so it just makes it easier on large events to avoid having to rebuild those, what can be very detailed maps and with a lot of operational information on them. So some key takeaways. What we showed you today is a complete solution for managing event permitting and the operations. If you're a public safety agency and you're just interested in the health and safety operations, you can just leverage special event operations and manage the events and ultimately develop your safety plans for that. The key thing to remember is that this isn't just for a single event. It could be used for that. It could be used for maybe a major event in your community that you want to track, but it's designed to support your entire portfolio. So that's many events happening across many locations on many times during during a given calendar year. And I hope you saw that the solution really promotes coordination and collaboration across many departments. The event coordinator kind of acts as that traffic cop to ensure that all of the departments are reviewing the permit applications, and then ultimately the proper plans are being developed to support a safe event. It does leverage a lot of real-time information on the day of the event, whether that's where your field staff are deployed, issues they may be uncovering during the event that may be health and safety related, or even real-time weather, traffic, and other information that helps protect people that are attending the event. We talked a lot about the after actions and how they can inform future events. And obviously, because of the conditions we're in with the COVID-19 pandemic, a great deal of thought has gone into kind of the health safety protocols that are now critical in any event or large gathering we have of people. And ultimately, those health safety protocols, we believe, will become the new normal going forward for quite some time. Before we just take final questions, the other thing I want to point out is that Jeremiah showed you during the safety planning aspect of the demonstration several different kind of COVID-related capabilities. Where are PPEs and hand sanitizing stations going to be placed? How do we make sure that there's a regular cleaning schedule for high-touch surfaces? And how do I plan for maybe people queuing up as they enter the facility or maybe where they gather? And ultimately, how do I monitor crowd capacity? And as we said, right, many of us are seeing that in our daily lives when we walk in and out of Home Depot or other facilities. And I just want to point out that if you're interested in those capabilities, not only for events in your community, but also maybe for your businesses, or perhaps if you're representing an educational institution, you can deploy the coronavirus site safety solution and use that to develop health safety plans for the facilities you maintain. So perhaps you're a government agency and you've got a campus of buildings and you're trying to understand how you can begin to allow members of the public back in a safe way. You could use this to develop safety plans for that, those facilities and that campus. And so I just wanted to mention that those capabilities are delivered in a unique solution as well if you were to need them for another use case. So before we open it up for questions, we'd love to get your feedback on the meetup itself. Please do take a few minutes to fill out the survey. I think Matt will probably drop that into the chat too, so it's easy for you to access. We really do appreciate any feedback you provide. We use that to guide future meetups and content we present in the future. So with that, we did have a few questions, and I guess I'll give everyone kind of last call on questions. I know we're right up against the hour, and we want to be mindful of your time. But we did have a couple questions, Jer. One was you showed a lot of information products, desktop applications that can be used through a browser for folks inside the organization, several mobile applications that are used day of event, and even some dashboards and after action reports. Does all of that come with the solution? Do I get all of that when I deploy special event permitting operations?
Yeah, when I showed a little bit ago, when I click that Get Now and it deploys, everything gets laid down for all the applications, all the supporting web maps, all get deployed at once, and it gets right inside your ArcGIS Online content.
And then when I set up with that Python notebook, the operational maps, it gives me the tracker feeds and all that stuff as well, right?
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So yeah, so for those, Jeremiah showed a lot, and it's using many different aspects of the ArcGIS, or many different aspects of ArcGIS, and all of that comes configured to work for one or more events in your community. So it is very much a comprehensive use of ArcGIS for special events. The other question we had related to that is, because you're using workforce, collector, work tracker, and you have information products that are designed for specific users, I would assume that they're all tied to an ArcGIS Online organizational account, and that's how you access these. Is that correct?
Yeah, I saw another question on that too. Correct. Yeah, all those internal applications are really meant to be an internal workflow where someone's logged in to do their work, whether you're a reviewer or you're a public safety person out in the field. I think one thing to keep in mind too is a lot of these are kind of more lightweight users. Like we have the field user or the editor type. So the reviewers could be editors. That's all they're doing is just editing editing their information on the map for their comments.
And if you have questions on the user types that are required for each of the info products, certainly don't hesitate to connect with Jeremiah. He can walk you through exactly what's required for each information product for sure. Any other questions from the group? I didn't see any more. I really appreciate everyone taking a few minutes to stay over. I'll just give kind of one last call. One did come in, Jeremiah. What about the solution on ArcGIS Enterprise? Right now, it's only supported in ArcGIS Online. What does the future hold for that?
Yeah, so it's in the plans. We don't have an official date. So there's a couple of things. One is the solution app, the way I showed you to deploy. There's plans on getting that supported for enterprise. Obviously, right now, if you're familiar with solutions, there's a pro add-in where you can deploy to enterprise. There's work being done to make sure that solution app can deploy to enterprise, and then we'll just have a couple of things we need to make sure and test with the enterprise for the way this is set up. So it's in the plans. I don't have an official date, but hopefully soon.
In all likelihood, Jeremiah, right, it'll require a pretty recent version, if not the most recent version of Enterprise to use it.
Correct. Yep.
So you'll probably need to be at 10.9 or thereabouts. Okay. Any other questions before we let everyone go? Well, Matt, why don't you wrap us up? I think we're all set.
All right, thanks everyone. So that concludes today's meetup. We know your time is valuable and we appreciate you joining us today. So our next meetup is scheduled for next month, November 19th, same time of day on a Thursday, and we'll be discussing the new recreation outreach solution. So until then, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.